Hey, what's up guys? My name is Moda and welcome back to the Mining Stacker YouTube channel. Today's video going to be talking about Kaspa FPGAs and what's coming down the pipeline, right? Including a potential 29.6 terahash monster, right? So we're going to talk about the ones we do know, where to purchase, price points, are they worth it, what ROI looks like, all of that, okay? So this might be kind of a lengthy one, but we're going to go in detail of the few things I've been able to dig up, because as we know, it's hard to find any info on FPGAs, right? So we'll talk about what we do know and what to look for, right? So if that sounds good, guys, stay tuned, all right? And so before we do start, though, want to throw a disclaimer out there that number one, none of this is financial advice, okay? Number two, there's going to be a lot of scams coming up. A lot of people are FOMOing into Kaspa. Everybody's getting hyped on it. Everybody's looking for this new hardware. Be aware of scams, guys. Okay, so we're going to talk about certain websites, certain things to do. Not all of these are going to be recommended. I'm just letting you know what I've been finding and like some points of contact. Okay, but keep in mind that there's going to be like bootleg websites and just a lot of scams. Unfortunately, this is what happens when people tend to start FOMOing into things, especially with like ASICs and FPGAs, right? A lot of it's super scammy, super sketch, so be aware of that. All right, so let's get to it. So first, let's talk about why everybody's FOMOing in, right? Why everybody's getting so excited. Kaspa has been on a tear, and it's still doing its thing, right? It's currently at number 70. It's been at that 4 cent mark, and it's been holding, right? Did go a little bit above, did go a little bit below, but overall, still in that range. I'm sure we maybe due for correction, but then again, I've been saying that since we were at 2 cents and then 3 cents and now 4 cents, right? Which is pretty crazy because I did a video, I was kind of going through my old videos, did one back in November about it, talked about my strategy back then, and it's worked beautifully. And this is another big thing I do want to harp on is make goals, guys. Make plans, stick with them. Okay, things are gonna happen, but do your research, do it with conviction, right? Especially like right now is a good example of FOMO. Like, it's so much hype right now, which is kind of borderline weird because it's all the freaking GPU mineable coins are pumping like crazy right now. But regardless, guys, make that plan and stick to it, right? If it makes sense to you at the time, that doesn't mean it's in concrete either, right? You got to be flexible. You got to like do different things. You got to take things into account, right? But for the most part, I know a lot of people have been saying, "Oh, should I jump in? Should I jump in right now?" Again, none of this is financial advice, but I would not be jumping in on a crazy green candle like this. This financially, putting the investor hat on, makes no sense. But at the same time, kind of also said that at 2 cents and at 3 cents, and now we're at 4 cents. But realistically, are we due for correction? In my opinion, yes. Will it be a harsh correction? We just go sideways? We don't know, right? We don't know the extent of it. Do your research, see what you think about it long term, right? So now let's get to some of the good stuff. So this is from hashrate.no, and this is a little list of some of the ones we have heard about, right? The most notable being this first guy, the Xilinx, the Varium C1100. Shout out to Red Fox Crypto. He was one of the first ones that had really been talking about it, and he's had his hands on it for a while, right? He just did a video not too long ago, and I kind of regretted not purchasing at the time because at the time, because you can actually purchase it straight from AMD, there was some kind of, I don't know if it was a discount or like a card error, but this was the price that was listed, but then when you would throw it in your cart, it was down to like 1600, right? So at the time, it was during that time that I was on vacay, so I was like, I'll look at it later. By that time, they had already fixed it, right? But that does give us price points, right? And even if you're not purchasing at that time, if it's something you're interested in, a project you're interested in, you want to still keep an idea of price points because as these things become available, they're going to go quick. Okay, and we'll talk about a good example of that here in a minute. So again, this does give us price points though, right? So we do have the stats here and it's phenomenal, right? Especially in comparison to GPUs. Because as we all know with Kaspa, they're going to go that route. We're already in the FPGA route. Okay, it's not speculative anymore. They've been here for a while actually, but they're just now starting to get to the point where these next few months especially, it's going to increase, right? And we'll talk about those here in a minute. But as we can see, this is kind of the current one that has been viable, but currently the wait list, the lead time is about 16 weeks. Is it realistically probably that long? Probably not, but we don't know, right? The other issue is the price. So this guy, although it is crazy efficient, right? We click on it. It's producing about 4.2 gigahash, right? Which is insane considering a 3070 makes like what? This would be the equivalent. Actually, that's about what my current rig is. I have like a 9-card rig right now and I'm at 4 gigahash, right? And it's a mix of mainly 3060 Ti's and a couple 3070s. And that's how many, and this thing's only doing 110 watts versus my rig is about 600 watts, right? So the efficiency increase is amazing. But again, the difference here is the price point, right? So 9 3070s would run you about 2,700. And this guy at 1,600 was definitely more appealing, especially because of the other one we're going to talk about here in a minute. But let's continue down the list of what Hashrate.no had listed. So the U50C, I have not been able to find any vendors or any way to really purchase. This guy, the Xilinx, the Tool TH53. So there's two variants actually. There's a TH53 and a TH55. The 55 is very close to the C1100 and actually very close to the Osprey. We'll talk about that one here in a second. But as far as purchasing, the only real information I've been able to find is through YouTube. So if you go on YouTube, you plug that in, there's a gentleman who comes up, again, not recommending you go this route, but just putting out there what I was able to find, because I literally cannot find any way to purchase, right? And that's the issue with the majority of these, okay? Excluding the Varium C11, if you try to look for even this other guy, the Forest Kitten 33, which I'm sure some of you guys have seen, right? There's quite a few other YouTubers who have these. It's damn near impossible to find. Even on eBay, the only way is like through like Discord, Reddits, and good luck getting a real transaction there, right? Again, a lot of scams to be aware of. But let's talk about this TH53. So this gentleman here apparently is able to source them. If you go through his contacts, like through some of the comments, he does provide his email. And his email does line up with the company. So I don't know if it seems as though he's affiliated with them. When you Google them, tool.com.tw, they are legit. They are the maker of Power Color, which I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard, and they've been around. Does that mean this dude's legit? We don't know, right? If any of you guys have contacted him or have purchased from him, let me know in the comments, right? But his email does line up there. Does make sense. Could it be a former employee doing that? Maybe, we don't know. This dude's been making content for a while, specifically about these cards. So it does seem like he's affiliated with them. It does seem kind of weird that he doesn't just put that out there, or that this isn't a channel from that company, right? So, just letting you know. Don't know prices, don't anything like that. I have not contact with him, because this isn't a route I would personally go. But if any of you guys want to dig deeper, you can go ahead there. And again, this guy, I did see one eBay auction like way back, but that's about it, right? These things were made a couple years ago. They're hard to come across, right? So now let's go to the new guy, right? We've heard about this guy. I did make a video when they released. This was back in November's when they were getting announced. And initially, right, because even back then, the problem for me was the price, right? Profitability wise, the coin has done, it's quite a different world from now till then, right? But my big beef with it was the price, okay? At $5,000 for something that we knew the other FPGAs were going to come out, hard pill to swallow, right? Now, whoever did purchase, and if you did get yours at that time, if you did get it immediately, which I know there was quite a bit of a wait, you're doing pretty well, and you're continuing to do pretty well, right? Because it's gone up so much, right? Back when that came out, it was announced, Kaspa was under a penny, right? It's 4x from since then, okay? But that was kind of the big turnoff for me, was that price. Even right now, doing calculations, the price is still turn off. But what they did do now, which was very, very smart of them, is they now made it so they have the E100, right? Meaning you could buy one of the boards. So it's the whole package, but it's just one board versus the three. Okay, the price did go up a little bit, but it was about 1,800 a couple days ago. And this makes it more appealing, right? Is it the best price? Comparing it to the Varium C1100, which again, very similar stats. Not exact, but very similar, plus or minus like 10%, right? Price-wise, it's better than this, right? But if you guys were able to get in that 1,600 price, that was the better deal. Will it go down to that? Was that a mistake? We don't know, right? But I wouldn't expect this thing to go down probably ever again, because I'm sure a lot of people have been putting in orders recently, so they know the demand is there. Okay, so the better deal to me, if you're interested, would be this guy. One other cool factor that I love, love, love is the fact that you can buy the other boards. So let's say you don't want to commit to the 5,000. This guy obviously is more expensive, right? It's, a percentage more. It's going to be cheaper if you're interested in buying the 3 just to buy the E300, right? The advantage here is that you can get a slice of it at a slight premium, and you can even add another board. They do have the option, if you want to do 2, you can add another board, right? Bringing the total to about 3,600, which again is still pretty pricey, but it's better than the other known one that we can currently buy, right? Also keep in mind that this thing is a pre-order. Delivery time won't be until mid-May, okay? Possibly even later, maybe sooner, we don't know. But also factor that in. That is quite a bit of time, okay? So now let's look at the new kid on the block. This is one that was shout out to Coastal Crypto Mining because they were the first ones that put it out. They put it out on Twitter. They made a YouTube short, so I would highly, highly recommend you guys follow them on any platform possible because they were the first ones talking about this guy, okay? And they're active in the community, guys. Like, they're active, they're participants. View their content. Highly, highly recommended. And price points. Price points were good. So when this guy, again, this is the thing, what I'm harping on, to be ready. Even if you're not super interested in buying, let's say, the Varium C1100, look at price points, look at comparisons, so when other machines come out, you can see if it looks like it's going to be worthwhile or not, right? Because at this rate, they are going to come out, and you may only have a small window to purchase if you're thinking about doing it, right? So good example is what happened here with Coastal Crypto. So when they announced it on Twitter, it was, I think, like 1,900 or something, right? And literally, it was within a matter of hours, it went up in price significantly, right? Not because they decided to raise this. They had a certain allotment in that first batch that they got, and the manufacturer raised the price for the next batch, right? So this one is a pre-order now for end of April for May delivery, okay? So keep that in mind. So this is a big reason why, guys. You need to be ready. You need to have like price points in mind. What's a good price and ways to find out, right? Use these calculators to see if things make sense. Because a good example was here is that you literally had a matter of a couple hours to decide if it was going to be a good deal or not. Because if you waited too long, price went up significantly. And this is going to be the case with all of these guys. Okay, and as this guy gets released on other venues, guess what? The price is also going to go up. Okay, these ASICs or FPGAs and these vendors, the demand is going to dictate that price, right? Everybody's FOMOing into Kaspa. So guess what? These prices are going to go through the roof, especially because this manufacturer is not, most likely not like a Bitmain or something where they're able to produce 100,000 units. It's probably only going to be in the hundreds, maybe 1,000, right? So keep that in mind. So if there's a limited supply and there's a whole lot of demand, you know what happens, okay? So keep that in mind. You have to keep these price points in mind, okay? Because they were listed on F2 Pool, I did try to dig up some information. The only thing I was able to find was that this is an older FPGA, came out a couple years ago. So that's why when people looked at the stats for the other things at mine, which is when it came out, if you take out the Kaspa, At the time, it was pretty good. I know the one that caught my eye was the K10. I was like, what? But it came out in 2020, so this was prior to the gold shell ASICs. So at the time, it was good, right? But obviously now, not so good. But now that they have a bit stream for Kaspa, it is now revived, right? And now they are making this guy again, and it looks pretty good, right? So currently it's at 2600. Again, if you jumped on it early, it was about 2000, but expect this to be probably the price. Some of the other vendors may start out at the 2000 range, but again, they're going to go quick, and you have to keep your eyes open, and good luck finding like a trusted vendor. Okay, the reason I felt comfortable with them is that, again, they are active in the community. They're always out there. They're active on Twitter. They respond quickly. Felt super comfortable. No doubt that it's going to come when it comes, right? So no affiliation with them. Not trying to show them. Just talking about them, right? So now they're not going to be the only one on the block, right? Nhash actually just today, this morning, tweeted about it, right? They're trying to look at interest about it. So get ready for the flood. Get ready for these other vendors to start selling them as well. They haven't put any price points. I'm sure they're trying to see how many they can get, so we can go from there, right? So expect to see, if you are interested, again, have that price point in mind. What price looks good to you? What price sounds good? Go through those calculators and see what makes sense, right? Because again, you're going to have a very limited window to see if it's worth it or not, okay? And then going kind of through, you can kind of see the only other one that was profitable. I kind of went through them just for taking a gander, was the Digibyte. So the Digibyte, if you put it on Digibyte, it is actually slightly profitable, oddly enough, which is kind of funny. But it is, as Coastal Crypto Mining mentioned, they are a subsidiary of Multminer, and we can see that they have made these. So it's not like a brand new manufacturer. Seems like they know what they're doing. They've been around. So keep that in mind also, right? And that's the other thing to keep in mind as we talk about some of these other ones. We don't really know how well put together it is. We don't even know if some of these are going to release, right? We'll talk about that last guy here in a second because there's very limited info on it. But let's continue on with what we're going here. So let's look at some calculators, right? So if we calculate, this is on hashrate.no. On the left side, they have a calculator tab. And here you can put in, your stats. And you can even put in the cost price, and it'll tell you your ROI, right? So that is something to factor in, something to think about, although it's not everything, right? You want to look at realistically your profitability and then look at your revenue, okay? So if we put in, because give or take, the two that are available that we can buy are what? The Varium C1100 and that Osprey, the E100 or E300, depending on what variant you want to take, right? So if we compare the E100, which is again very comparable to the Varium C1100, right? So we put that in, we put 4,600 megahash, 4.6 gigahash at about 130 watts. Okay, so this is not exact, right? This is for the E100. The Varium C1100, I believe, is 4.2, and a give or take, it's going to be about the same. So it's within 10%. This is not exact. This is just a ballpark. Okay, so if we put in for the E100, we put in the stats, we hit the calculate, and this is at a 10-cent kilowatt hour. Your profit would be about $4.78 a day, right? Not too bad. Your ROI would be 408 days. Okay, and this is for the E100, which to me is the better deal at this $2,300 price. If it goes down to $1,600, then it's much more comparable, but factor in that you are going to have to buy a cooler for it, which Osprey Electronics actually does make a cooler. It's about $100. So keep in mind that you may have to add that on there. So give or take, very comparable, these two guys. This to me might be the better package though, because it's complete, right? You actually have the housing, you have the cooler, you have the fans, you have the control board. And I love the fact that it's like modular like this, where you can actually buy the individual board, right? Fitting in a max of 3, which keep in mind that it will fit 2 of these 27.6 millimeters, and then the last one will be that 20 millimeter if you're thinking about doing that, right? One other thing to note is the fact that they are seems like they're actively working on trying to get other bit streams going, namely Ergo and RXD, which they do have listed. Okay, and expect Team Red Miner to release more as well. Okay, so that's probably going to be an option here for this guy as well. So that's kind of the cool thing with FPGAs versus ASICs, is that that possibility is there for other bit streams. Because as I mentioned in that GPU mining video, right, I know we're all getting hyped on it, but none of those new coins are really committed to GPU only mining, okay? Meaning they're all going to FPGA and then to ASICs, okay? So just keep that in mind, and that's why I'm kind of leaning towards some of these FPGAs, just to diversify a bit, right? Because the ones that, again, are committed, such as Flux, Ergo, Raven, they're not really profitable right now. Okay, so factor that in, guys. Think about that as well. So let's go back to this calculator. So not bad, right? For about 2,000 bucks, making about $5 a day. But keep in mind that as these things come out, what's going to happen? Difficulty is going to go through the roof. Okay, so these are things you got to kind of think about as well, right? So even looking at your Kaspa, even if this drops in half, even if instead of getting 128, let's say the difficulty and the hash rate doubles, this goes down to $2.50, right? This thing uses so little power that it's still going to be profitable. Okay, so these are things you got to think about as well when you're doing your calculations, is that it's going to increase. As these guys release, which we know they're releasing and they're coming out, we don't know to what extent, right? We don't know if it's only going to be in the hundreds or in the thousands. Realistically, I don't think it's going to be in the thousands, but we don't know, at least not yet, right? Because remember, these are only FPGAs. We are eventually going to get ASICs, okay? So that's for that, guys. So again, that's for the E100 and the C1100, which are very, very comparable. So now if we plug in the stats for the Multminer M2, right? And this is where it's different, right? So this is where two different mindsets kind of have to like play with each other, right? One is efficiency, right? We've all been saying efficiency is king, but sometimes it does make more sense to get, because of price points, to get one that is just more powerful, but the price is lower even though it's less efficient, okay? And this is a good example, because this M2, this Multminer M2 is not as efficient as those other FPGAs, right? Because if we look at the stats, it's going to be about 10.5 gigahash at 1300 watts. It's going to have two settings, but if you're buying this guy, you're going to be ripping this thing to the max. So we'll put that into the calculator, and although it's a lot less efficient, right, look at your profit. Okay, even putting it at that $2,600, the ROI is 277 days. Okay, your profit's going to be about 10 bucks. Okay, is your power cost higher? Yes. But for the price, that's what you got to think about. Okay, this guy's only, at the time when I bought it, it was 1,900 bucks. So it was the cost of a E100, right? But getting more than 2 times as much hash. Less efficient, yes, but you have to take these things into account. Just because it's less efficient doesn't mean it's garbage. Okay, so for the price, even at 2,600 bucks, your ROI is still less than those guys. Okay, so just something to think about. And especially if it does come back down to this $2,000 price, goes down to 235 days, right? So what about 3,000? 353 days does start changing slightly, right? And you have to factor in Kaspa's aggressive emission rate and aggressive, difficulty increases. Okay, so you can't really put an ROI for 2 years because it's going to be a whole different thing in 2 years. Realistically, if you're getting one of these things, it's to get as much as you can within the next 6 months or so before like bigger ASICs start coming out on the network. But again, these FPGAs, hopefully they do continue to support, make different bit streams. So we do know that that's coming with the E100 and most likely the Varium C1100, and hopefully Team Red Miner again continues to do their thing because it's going to be very viable. Because again, we all know that Nex is going to go that route, Radiant's going to go that route, and I'm sure if any others release also, right? Alephium, Ironfish, we'll see. Time will tell on those algorithms, but keep that in mind, right? With the Multminer M2, will they continue to support it? Most likely, right? Because that way they can continue selling this older hardware. They just have to come up with bit streams for it. How it's going to work exactly, I'm not sure. Is it going to be super open? We don't really know until we get these things to be able to mess with them. Maybe ask Coastal Crypto. Maybe they have more info, but we'll see. But even right now, currently, just for Kaspa alone, very, very appealing at this price, right? So now let's look at, so this is also for comparison's sake, right? For us to be able to, this is also the reason that the M2 looks good, because in order for us to get that same amount of hash rate, so this is with 3070s, we would need 16 of them to hit about 10,000 mega hash. Okay, so that's the other thing to factor in, is that price-wise, right? 16 3070s, let's say you get them at, a steal of a deal and they're at $300, which is a good deal right now, right? I bring it to $4,800, right? Not including the cost of your power supplies, your board, the rest of your setup, right? So these are the things you got to factor in. Even if you were to get 3070s at, let's say, $200, which would be a deal where I would even jump on, right? That still would bring you at $3,200. Plus, these are still less efficient. Okay, so something to also factor in, right? So again, price points. It's all up to you on deciding what's worth it, right? I'm curious to see what NHash will list this thing as, because they are typically one of the cheaper ones, right? So I'm curious as to how greedy they get, right? Because this will kind of tell us what these other manufacturers will also do, okay? Because I'm sure that everybody's been seeing all this hype with Kaspa, and they're going to be interested as well, right? So here's that. So again, these are calculations you got to factor in. So now let's talk about this last guy, which there isn't really much info on, right? Although we do have the stats, which is this freaking monster, 29.4 gigahash, okay, at 1560 watts. Okay, so it's huge, it's dense, it's efficient, but I've never heard of Super Scalar, however the hell you pronounce it, right? Is this even real? We don't know. It's listed on F2 pool. If you go through their miners, they just put it up there. So to me, it does seem like it exists. I haven't been able to find any vendors that are currently selling it. We have no price points, right? But considering the profitability of this guy, that it's $30 profit, right? That's at a 6 cents though. Let's update this. Let's put this at 10. Ooh, 0.01. No, not 0.01. 0.1. Still $29 a day profit. Okay, so this guy will probably not be cheap, right? The easiest comparison we can make as far as gigahash go is two E300s, right? Each E300 is about 5 grand, okay? 10 grand. This guy's less efficient than that though, right? So I would expect maybe 7,000, somewhere in that ballpark. So these are things you got to factor in, you got to consider. So when you do see it available, something you got to consider. But keep in mind, guys, that again, never heard of this brand, not much info on it, doesn't even specify whether it's a FPGA or ASIC. But these are the types of things that are coming. So get ready for them, right? And get ready, have price points in your head to see what's a good deal. Because if this guy drops, again, it's not as efficient as two E300s, but it has that hash rate, right? So a bad deal would be anything over 10. A good deal would be if it's significantly less than that, right? Because again, it's not as efficient, right? It's a good amount more power, although 500 watts in the long game isn't a whole lot. And then also factor in whether this is an FPGA or an ASIC. If this is an ASIC using older chips, not as appealing either, right? Because it's only going to be able to do that one thing. Versus the E300, we know, hopefully, we don't know, but hopefully, according to the timeline, they are going to release bit streams for Radiant and possibly Ergo, right? Which I haven't seen anything yet, so can't really put that out there until we see it, but keep that in mind, right? So if this is an FPGA, it's more appealing. If it's an ASIC, the price would have to be lower, right? So realistically, I would think about it at like 4,000 to 5,000, right? Is it going to be that low? Probably not, right? Why? Because everybody's FOMOing into freaking Kaspa. When people see the ratings on this thing, they're going to be jumping in, and these manufacturers know it, right? So we'll see what happens. We'll see who ends up carrying it, who ends up listing it. If I hear anything, I will post it. I will post it on Twitter. I think when the M2 came out, I did retweet it from Coastal Crypto as soon as I heard about it. So follow those guys. I would highly recommend following Coastal Crypto Mining because they were first on the beat with that M2, right? And we're going to see other listings, and I'm sure they're asking their sources, asking their vendors to see what's going on with anything else, right? So again, super big shout out to them for doing that for the community, right? All right, guys, so just wanted to give you an update on what's going on because I know a lot of questions. I know I've personally had a lot of questions, and that's why I've been researching so much, right? I've been trying to see what I could find. Unfortunately, it's not a whole lot, but did try to consolidate it onto one video. And let me know. Let me know if you guys have found any other sources, if you guys have been hearing anything, what the rumor mill is, anything. Let me know in the comments. Let's help each other out because if this is something we're interested in, these are things we want to know because, again, as these things get released, chances are you may only have minutes to an hour window to decide if you're going to purchase or not, right? Especially at certain prices. Of course, these things are going to be available, right? When these get dumped, they're going to be available, but maybe not at the prices that make sense, right? Like the M2, we saw that there was that big increase, and I'm sure we're going to see it from other vendors, right? Especially right now while the FOMO is like through the freaking roof, right? All right, guys, just want to give you that update. Thank you for watching. Please comment, like, and subscribe, and I am out.